What I love to do is introduce the right people to the right people.
I assemble the smartest people I can think of or reach out to carry that conversation, and that's exactly what I've done today.
Please give my panel a round of applause. Welcome.
Okay guys, Jay Martin here, CEO of Cambridge House, and I'm very excited to introduce my next guest, Daniella Cambone, the editor-at-large and anchor at Stansberry Research. Longtime friend, speaker at my conferences. For ages, I touted Daniella as the best broadcast journalist in the junior mining sector. Daniella, it's great to have you on and connect.
Jay, it's my honor, and I just want to congratulate you on, you're not my competitor, but you have launched a really successful show here. I've been following it. You have great guests, and you're awesome at what you do. So congrats on the success of the show.
Thank you. No, I feel super fortunate. It's a ton of fun. And I'm sure we have a lot of war stories that we could share.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Where I want to start is, like me, you probably sit down with the largest variety of personalities in now macro finance. It's not just the mining sector anymore. It's broad spectrum finance. And when you do that, you must pick up on trends. You must pick up on hype. And you've seen a number of cycles occur, come and go. How do you determine, Daniella, when you're talking to a guest these days, whether what's catching the attention is just hype or if there's some long-term trend underneath the narrative?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Jay. And I always try and bring on guests that I feel my audience, wants to hear from and are not pushing an agenda. But of course, sifting through the noise and figuring out who's, speaking the truth or speaking from an agenda, that's one of the main roles of journalism. And how do I guess your question is, how do I know if someone's being straight up or pushing something?
Or selling something. Yeah.
Or selling. I mean, I tell my audience, or what, I need to also be doing is, if you look back on the interviews and if they've been repeating the same thing, year after year, and if something doesn't pan out, right, and it was just a sweeping statement because maybe it got them views in that moment, well, then maybe that's where you need to question their track record.
Sure.
And again, doesn't mean that they're not popular people, but just take that with a grain of salt that, if they've been saying this event is going to happen and it hasn't happened and 10 years have passed, well, maybe you just need to maybe take a step back and reevaluate that. And it's not to say that we can't be wrong and calls can't be wrong. And I always say it's not easy. Okay. It's really hard to go out there and make a call, especially when it comes, we do it. Where's gold going? Where's Bitcoin going? To stick your neck out and make that call is a lot harder than people think. So, also take that with a grain of salt. No one knows, and here we are, asking these experts, well, tell me, where do you think it's going? And they give us a number and, most of the times it's not going to pan out. So I think, if someone's really off on a call, I don't think, well, they don't know what they're talking about then. I think there's a lot of factors at play. And that's why I'm not a huge fan of asking for forecasts. I do it because I know the audience, most of them, that's what they want to know, but sure. I don't think it's fair that we have to, hold people to those forecasts forever.
I'm with you.
But and just on that note about, it's happened to me a few times, and it happened to me recently where during an interview, I'll actually have some sort of eureka moment or enlightening. And I love when that happens. I wish it were to happen more often. And offline, I don't know if you want me to share this story. We were talking about how I had Michael Saylor on recently, who's, the CEO of MicroStrategy, famously made a huge call in Bitcoin and move into Bitcoin, a very bold move into Bitcoin. And, it's no secret. I obviously come from the gold world and I am invested in Bitcoin. But getting me there in terms of seeing Bitcoin from a speculative asset to a vehicle of wealth preservation is something I'm having a hard time doing. And during the interview, he didn't know he was doing it, but he was walking me through that path and trying to get me over that threshold of it is wealth preservation. It is a long-term play. Bitcoin is life. Bitcoin is alive. Now, kind of loses me when Bitcoin proponents say Bitcoin solves all world problems. Bitcoin is love. That's kind of where the narrative gets lost on me. But I love that interview because it caused me to think to, step away from that interview and look at Bitcoin differently. So whenever that happens, I know, wow, that was a really good interview,
Well, yeah, he's such a, I don't want to call him a gift, but he's kind of a gift to the Bitcoin community because he's so articulate. If there was ever going to be a poster child for the corporate world moving towards Bitcoin, I mean, he's the guy, right? He's very eloquent, very passionate, very intelligent, very successful. He ticks all the boxes. And he's somewhat evangelical about Bitcoin. And so in terms of driving that bullish narrative, he's an excellent candidate for that. Now, from your seat, you've seen trends like this come and go. You've seen the Bitcoin trend come and go before 2016, 17, 18, right? Here it is again. Different, but it's back, right? You've seen gold markets come and go. What do you look for when, so I asked this because I'm also invested in Bitcoin. I'm a precious metal investor, quite diverse in my portfolio, but I hold Bitcoin and I dollar cost averaged in. It's like, I don't know if I'd look at it as a safe haven asset class yet. We talked about this a bit, but more of a speculation. But now I'm seeing a lot of the signs that resonate with me as a top. And I mean, the retail froth. I mean, people who have never purchased a stock now calling me for Bitcoin investment advice. I mean, Lindsay Lohan on Twitter telling everyone, if you don't own Bitcoin, you're an idiot. These are the things that we should watch out for, the red flags. Now, are you seeing that? Are you seeing that shift in sentiment in the Bitcoin market now?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And had you asked me a month ago, I was sure Bitcoin was going over 100,000. Even 2 months ago when the euphoria was really high. Now we're obviously in some sort of consolidation period here. Right. And I know when energy's down because, like you, I live based on traffic and numbers and what content's being digested. So I kind of see it as it's happening, right? And the Bitcoin energy, for whatever reason right now, has kind of gone, right? We're not really moving anymore. So that said, I don't think this is a top. And again, this is purely just based on my gut instinct. I still wouldn't be surprised to see Bitcoin go north of 100,000. But I also wouldn't be surprised to see it have an 80% correction the next day.
Okay.
And that's how I view Bitcoin. Yeah. So no, I don't think we're at a top yet.
Okay. I'm with you. Now, you interview individuals like Michael Saylor.
Right.
You also interview individuals like Jim Rickards, right? And so they're the icons in the gold and the Bitcoin space and everybody in between. Now, the gold versus Bitcoin debate often becomes very binary, right? It's like you got to choose one or the other.
Yeah.
And if you choose this camp hates you. If you choose that, this camp hates you, right? And, you referenced before we hit record here, your portfolio is spread out, actually. You've got positions in each. Why is that a mistake? What are investors missing when they believe it's one or the other? And how does that impact your portfolio?
Yeah, another good question, Jay. And I think people will be surprised because, of course, I've emerged and I'm very present in the gold world. And of course, I don't think it's any secret. I'm a big believer and proponent of holding gold. But I do believe that there is space for Bitcoin. And the way, again, this is what works for me and the way I view it is Bitcoin is a speculative asset for me. So the way I play Bitcoin is money that I am not afraid to lose, that if I were to lose that money, it does not affect my quality of life. The money that I need long-term is in cash, gold, and silver, primarily gold. And I'm not losing sleep at night with that. So I've used this example in the past for I'm a new mom to twin boys and whatever, they're 100% in gold. Whatever money has come in for them is all in gold because they don't need to touch that for 20, 30, 40 years. So when people are like, oh, but look at gold hasn't done anything since August. I don't need it to. I'm fine with where gold is here.
Right.
I actually like to buy gold below 1,200 and it kind of it hurts me to buy gold here, but I still do. So they're all in my portfolio, but they serve different functions. If that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
So for me, long-term wealth preservation, it's gold, period.
Got it.
And yeah, I mean, obviously in cash too, but Bitcoin is just, if I can get in and, have my money grow via Bitcoin, why not? But I'm also prepared to lose all of it.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. I see it similar in my portfolio, to be honest. Now, Daniela, reflecting back on like the years you've been hosting interviews, what's the most significant piece of advice that you've ever received from a guest?
Wow. That is a loaded question. That's what's me sifting through thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of interviews.
Who do you quote most often?
Wow. That's like asking me, choose between my children. But in my head, I mean, I look back a lot of my interviews as research for myself. And the people I always go back to are like the Frank Giustras, the Jim Rickards, Rick Rule, Doug Casey has taught me so much, things that he told me like 10 years ago. And I thought at the time, like, I don't know, that's really out there, and now I'm like, wow, he was right. I think he's such a visionary. And he's such a gift for our industry. So he's taught me a lot. Like I said, Frank Giustra has taught me a lot about the role of gold. When you're talking about how Michael Saylor is really the poster child for Bitcoin. For me on the gold side, it's really like the Rickards, the Giustra.
Yeah.
So, I've had so much wealth accumulation. I can't say there's like one specific, but, advice, but Jim Rogers had a good one about when I was talking to him about Bitcoins about Bitcoin. And he said, the problem with bubbles is that no one really ever wins because you just don't know when to get in and out at the right time. So he really kind of framed that up, brilliantly for me. So,
interesting.
Yeah, I always just, like I said, I go back and I listen to a lot of these experts I speak to because I've learned so much, and I really think that all these interviews have added to my knowledge base and have made me the journalist I am today. So I can't just pick one for you, Jay. I know you want that. One,
but I'll counter that bull market quote. First of all, I love it. And I was chatting with Ronnie Stofferly. Have you had him?
Yes.
Yeah. His comment about bubbles is a bubble is just a bull market that you don't have a position in. And he's a gold investor who's positioned one of his funds in Bitcoin, got a lot of hate for it. And his response was, you're calling it a bubble because you're not positioned in it. That's all, which I just thought that's a smart rebuttal. I love that.
Right.
Okay. Now you listed a lot of names that we know.
But if I could add one, I'll add one, which has caused me to reflect a lot is when Rick Rule was on and I asked him the best advice he ever got. And he said it was from his wife, who when he was so focused on, I got to make money. And we've all been there, right? Like we're hungry. We want to be successful. We want that financial freedom. But for him, his Eureka moment, and this resonated with me, is he stopped focusing on wanting to make money and help others. And he said, that's when he saw the greatest wealth come in.
Interesting.
So that's lingered with me. And I love helping people, and I just thought that was really interesting. So, a lot of these things just stay in my mind, and I keep thinking about it and thinking about it. So that was one.
More will surface tonight, I'm sure. And, Rick lives that, right? I've been a benefactor of that. He's very gracious with his time, spends a lot of time and energy reaching down to the next generation. One of the few who gave me a big kick in the ass like 12 months ago. You got to start sticking your neck out, right? This isn't enough. You're not doing enough, which I loved. Okay. Now you mentioned a lot of big names that we know: Doug Casey, Jim Rickards, Jim Rogers, Frank Giustra, Rick Rule. Who's off the radar though? Who should our audience be paying attention to that is less known?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I love this. So I've discovered some new gems. I feel like it's like mining in a way. And when I find that person, I'm like, yay, and that's something I just want to say I'm proud of that I built at Kitco, my prior life, where I have a good sense of if someone's going to be a talent. Like I'll meet them and be like, you know what? I think there's something there. And if I could help propel that person and give them a platform, that brings me so much joy. So, for example, when I first had met E.B. Tucker, who's a speaker at your show, I was like, this guy's going to be phenomenal for camera. He should have a newsletter. And I'm not saying that I am the reason to success at all, but I knew he'd be good for interviews. And in fact, he's, done extremely well.
For a guy who has zero social media presence, EB's made himself quite the name.
Yeah. So off the radar. So, and this might be not off the radar for you, but they were for me, was I just met Lawrence Leopard, who's a newsletter writer. I've had him on twice now. The audience loved him. I highly recommend people follow him. I think he resonates really well with the audience. I'm a big fan of Vince Lancy. He's really like this classic New Yorker, kind of disgruntled trader, old school, but tells it like it is. And he's the founder of Echo Bay Partners and also is a writer for Zero Hedge. But I like him because he always offers, just a different perspective, So in terms of two new people on my horizon, yeah. And actually, this week I just had Lynette Zhang on.
Interesting, yeah. Okay.
She's a chief market strategist, I believe, at ITM. I had never interviewed her. Now she has a huge following, but I just liked her matter-of-fact way of speaking. And if the times, like even if I don't agree with them, but the way they present that information and it makes me think and reflect, I'm like, hey, I'm all for that. So those are just a few names that I've been following more closely.
Okay, I appreciate that. Now, one thing you must do, and I find out myself doing this with my guests frequently, is you hear, 10, 11, 12 perspectives, and without question, you end up identifying where there's consensus, right? And that's where I end up spending the most attention, right? If I think back to last winter and early spring, every guest I had on the show, 90% of them were telling me something along the lines of, I've got a non-zero position in Bitcoin, right? They're pushing some percent of capital that direction. Now, that's all I have to see, enough times over a variety of individuals to know there's a wave of money moving that direction. So I want to put myself in front of it. Obviously, that ended up being a great trade. So this year, Daniella, does anything stand out as consensus? All the guests you've spoken to so far in 2021, where is the most bullish sentiment consolidated?
Right now, I'm feeling the heat on copper. And I'm not saying it. I'm just saying where I'm feeling the energy from the guests, copper, uranium. And I think there's a lot of hope riding on silver.
Interesting.
And I really hope for the silver investors.
Yeah.
This will pan out. So this whole movement towards greener energy, electrification, how necessary silver will be. I hope this will be the breakout, if not this year, next year, for silver. But right now, it's like copper and uranium are feeling hot to me.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. I think that's a great place to wrap it up. Look, thanks so much for coming on. It's about time we did this.
Hey, continued success, Jay. You're killing it. And I can't wait to be back at the next VRIC.
Yes.
So it's one of the greatest conferences I attend. So I look forward to that.
Yeah, fingers crossed this January. We'll see you back in Vancouver.
Absolutely. A lot of fun.
Okay. Thanks, Daniella.
Thanks, Jay.